Hey guys, welcome to the Blue Collar Business Podcast, where we discuss the realest, rawest, most relevant stories and strategies behind building every corner of a blue collar business. I'm your host, Cy Kirby, and I want to help you in what it took me, trial and error, and a whole lot of money to learn. The information that no one in this industry is willing to share. Whether you're under that shade tree or have your hard hat on, let's expand your toolbox. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Blue Collar Business Podcast. We have talked about many various topics on this channel so far, from continued education to having different influencers here, to engineers, to aviation engineers, and handyman. But today is a pretty exciting little opportunity for a lot of you guys. We have Miss Lauren Furtado, the Unconventional CFO, correct? I did say that correct, right?
That is correct.
Okay. We are going to be discussing some things that all of you guys and myself need help with. There is no doubt about it. And it's one of the main reasons I started this whole podcast, was to connect ladies like herself with the expertise and experience that she has, but is willing to actually explain and come down to our level of, hey, this guy is an electrician. He doesn't even know what P&L acronym stands for yet. And so we're going to go through some of these, number one, mindset hurdles that we need to get over as entrepreneurs so we can also speak the same language. But we're something that Miss Lauren has already expressed her passion about, and that's cash flow, and cash flow being king, and cash flow management, but also how she's going to help us in the world of forecasting. Like, that world for me is still such a struggle to understand, because we're just trying to make it to the end of the month a lot of times, you know, in the blue collar sense, especially in the first 5 to 7 years or 3 years, if you make it past that point. So, and then last but not least, we're going to talk about accountants in general, because I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of my experience of the several accountants that I have been through to get to where I'm at, and why I'm looking into the fractional CFO kind of route to help my accountant, and how they can supplement behind the scenes and not waste one of your payroll team members that maybe don't have all the knowledge. You can bring somebody in like Miss Lauren Furtado, the Unconventional CFO. Thank you so much for joining me.
I appreciate you, Cy.
You are the financial guru, and actually, guys, and it's so funny, as we think, especially in the South, New York, you know, there's even a little bit of a gap there for us to, you know, reach that upper echelon level of language sometimes. So our brief intro call we had, we were discussing, literally talking about where kind of the history of the struggle that I have been through as a business owner, and, you know, Sarah being the ultimate CFO, but not really knowing what a CFO is encompassed with, and all the burden that comes with the CFO position. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Unconventional CFO and what you do for these blue collar men and women.
Yeah, so I want to maybe just start with the background on why it's Unconventional CFO. And I really say that in two respects. First is, when you think of what a CPA is and looks like, typically it's not me. I am covered in tattoos. I've got my nose pierced, right? I've got my long dark hair, and you're not thinking of, you know, a guy with white hair behind his big wooden desk with a sweater vest, right? So I think I just like to break the perception of what accountants look like, number one, but also two, in the way that we deliver our service. We were chatting earlier just about really making the information and the concepts digestible. So I think that is very much not the norm in the accounting world. I think often business owners, especially in the blue collar space, feel intimidated by some of the financial concepts. And it's unfortunate that that is not backed in nothing, right? So I think that perception is accurate of what some accounting and finance folks do, right? They talk over you. They say, I've got it handled. Like, they don't actually take the time from a client service perspective to explain the concepts and the impacts of your
Hmm.
decisions on your financials. That's another driver on why we named it Unconventional CFO.
No, anybody in the white collar sector, I mean, anytime you're thinking finance, immediately white collar, there is this ginormous divide between our language level and what we understand. Hell, we're just trying to get enough work to keep our guys busy and all the other little things that it takes to keep this thing going. But once you start actually compounding some work together, and then all of a sudden you're out past your skis real quick with all the money flooding in, whether it's flooding in or it's not enough
Hmm.
in a lot of cases, and knowing where to start. And somebody like yourself that is willing to come on a show like this, completely designated to the blue collar sector of the world, and go, hey guys, I'm your person. I deal with, um, I want to touch on one point, and where you were the CPA is a lot of the white haired wooden desk gavel thrower. They want to tell us we're here,
Yep.
but you need to be here, Cy, and that needs to be done by April. Have a good day. And I'm like, well, just build me a stair step. Just give me a path, a plan of action, anything, please. And because it's our finances, it's our
Yep.
financial, like those financial statements to you guys in the blue collar world are everything. And let me tell you about it from experience. When you're providing crappy financials, you're going to get the word no more than you'll ever experience, and you're going to turn people off by just looking. It's proper people that understand a P&L, like Miss Lauren,
Yeah.
but bringing you
And
in to maybe shape that a little bit.
yeah, often, right, you're going to get no's from banks when you're looking for financing. You're not going to be able to purchase equipment. You're not going to be able to grow your team. You're going to get no on bonding, right? That's
This,
another one where they're looking for your financials. And if one, your bookkeeping's messy or it's not up to date, and you can't clearly communicate kind of why certain things happen in the finances of your business, it becomes really difficult. And I think being support from a continuing perspective for the clients that we serve, I'm able to do that with them, right? Them feeling just the comfort of me being on a call with a bunch of bankers that are asking questions about even just mid-year financials, like, hey, what's this from? What is this? Why this? Right. So just having someone in your corner, right, to
mm,
support you in conversations that can feel very intimidating when, like we talked about before, I might even not even understand the difference between my profit and my cash. So often I hear like my P&L says I'm profitable, but where's my cash? I'm having a hard time making payroll, right? So like just to be able to bridge the gap on some of the knowledge going into those conversations and then being there to support, I think is just such an intangible thing that people don't realize. Just to build your confidence, it just
mm.
makes a world of difference.
The confidence is everything too. And it's like, do you, I wish I would have slowed down and listened to Sarah a little bit. I have no problem in saying that, because if I knew the importance of what the questions, she was asking the right questions, although she was being guided the wrong direction several different times. And I got to say, that's the little bit of the leading into kind of my first point of the day, is that mindset hurdle that entrepreneurs face, business owners in their financials, because they're like, well, I don't want to bring anybody in. That we feel this embarrassment, this
Of
shame,
course.
because when we're expected to know in a lot of conversations. You hit two on the head: bankers and bonding,
Yeah.
and utility guys, excavation guys. Utilities especially live and die by your bonding cap aggregate of
Yep.
what the entire top line revenue, which equals, obviously, if you're doing things right, job costing and expense tracking, profit at the end of the year. And the most important thing is documenting and knowing your cost per job, per item. And there was a lot of years that I didn't know my cost. I was just out there, but I can't tell you the amount of guys that are in my shoes sitting here going, hey, that's me. And there's probably some guys going, what an idiot. But at least I'm vulnerable enough to go, hey guys, this was me. And I need you to understand it's a lot of us out there,
Yep.
because the mindset switch that you need to have, from my experience, is, hey, you're not in the business all the time. By this point in my world where I started feeling like this is like, I had to be out there in the field and I had to be up there and estimating and I had to be everywhere, but I was still just trying to stay in the business role
Where you're
instead of.
comfortable.
Exactly. It's
Mhm.
comfortable, right? But
Yep.
then nothing is growing. Everything is dying because you're not out here working on the business and understanding and learning and engaging while your entire team is looking at you going, hey, dude, will you just get it together, please? We're waiting on
Well,
you
it's
here.
becoming the CEO, right? And it's
Good.
not being a doer. It's not fulfilling the jobs. It's being able to manage team, understand your finances. It's all those things. And that, I think, is a big hurdle for guys that have worked blue collar businesses traditionally, right? That
Mm.
like when you're used to spinning the tools, that's where your comfort level is. It's hard to make that jump into that CEO level mentality of like managing it in a very different way. And it's interesting because you said vulnerability, and I always say it's like the financial nakedness. Like I'm asking
Mm.
you to expose it,
Yep.
right? Because your finances are a reflection of all the decisions you've made, right? Even on a personal basis, if I said, Sai, show me your credit card statement right now, you probably would cringe. You'd say, Lauren, absolutely not. Because you're going to see that like we ordered pizza 3 times last week and like I'm wasting money on 10 different subscriptions that I probably don't even use. And
Right.
like, so it's a matter of being able to let go of any judgment. So finding a professional you feel like really comfortable and that you can trust with your numbers and that there's not going to be judgment, right? It is what it is. And for me, when you talked about the steps you need in order to get to a certain point, the only way that I can bridge the gap on where we are today and where you want to be is by really understanding and have a good understanding of the financials
Mm.
and the habits that led up to that. Because I can't say, Sai, go cancel these
Mm.
5 subscriptions or only order pizza once a week and then we can meet your goal if I don't understand some of that, right? So it's being able to be vulnerable with the good, bad, and anything in between and just exposing it. Like I have seen so many transactions. I've seen bankruptcies of multi-billion-dollar companies in my experience. Like I've seen things go really badly, but I've also seen things go really well. And unless you're willing to look at your numbers, you have a glorified hobby. I'm sorry to tell you that, but like if you are not in business to just spend your time and not do anything with it, if you have no goals of growth, of
Mm.
selling it one day or passing it down to your son or actually trying to provide for your family and meet additional goals, then you don't even need to bother looking at the numbers.
The difference between entrepreneurs and skilled business owners just do the thing. They're going through the flow. Yeah, I've got the business. Entrepreneurs are always trying to build value within the business itself. And so that way, that one day they can either exit from it, give it to your
Mhm.
son. But you're right. I think I'll tell him myself, I lost focus in last year with just everything we went through economically wise. There was still companies around me doing just fine. Don't get me wrong. There were larger companies, but it was extremely tough. So for me to focus on the bad during the bad was even worse for myself, and the embarrassment, because like when my guys are broke, so what? Nobody knows that they eat a can of tuna until Friday and they get a paycheck. When the company's broke and the owners are broke, everybody knows it. Everybody knows every single day. And it seems like it just all hits at once. And if you maybe had a cash flow management system to maybe tell you when those spikes are coming, you can prepare for that. And that's things I've just learned in the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And forecasting, it's obviously not a crystal ball, right?
Mm.
But it can directionally kind of give you the indicators on when you have inflows and outflows happening, right? Without cash flow forecasting, it is very hard to make decisions. And to be honest, when you alluded to before we hopped on about like just businesses going out, one of the biggest reasons that businesses go out of business is because of bad cash flow decisions, right? Like I'm going to buy this
100%.
piece of equipment or I'm going to hire this person. And like all of a sudden, after a couple of months, literally your cash is liquidated. that you have nothing to show for potentially years of hard work. So it's really unfortunate if you don't take the opportunity to have someone help you build that cash flow. And it doesn't have to be a fractional CFO, right? If you're on the smaller side, to be honest, if you have the discipline and accountability to be able to do it yourself, you have to have some ability to see where you're going. Because again, like, we spend a ton of time with our clients actually digging deep into your business goals and your personal goals when we do onboarding. Because it's, let's pull back the layers, right? Of like, why do we want to 10x revenue by next year, right? Like, help me understand the whys behind it, right? Like, and we can only break it into like the steps and the timing and like the things to do if we have the understanding of like what those things are, to be able to put it in the picture. And we can scenario build. Oh, so you need to buy, you're going to need to do like extra maintenance on the equipment next year, and it's going to double that cost. All right, plug it in. All right, you want to hire a new project manager? All right, plug that in, right? So it's, again, just understanding the impact of the things before it's already happened.
That's what we all want as business owners and entrepreneurs. We want to, especially when things are going bad, man, it rains. It feels like every little thing is all going to come down on you all at once. And then you look at the bank account, you can't fix no problems. And I can't tell you how many times, especially in the last 5 years, I doubled my gross revenue up until 24. It was going great. And again, I lost focus on the things that I needed to be focusing on. Sales being number one and building a great sales team. I thought, utility and excavation guys, we don't need a sales team. We just need an estimator. He can handle it all, right? No, I was asking a lot out of one individual, and now I've built a team, and the sales is just completely game changer in 12 months. And production, that was the next thing, to meet up to the production level. But you know what they both need? They need those numbers of what they're actually producing. If we don't get that back to the right people, the right system, we're not billing for it. We miss a billing. That's a huge, altogether big deal, right, per project. But the accounting side of things is always, from my experience, and hopefully I'm speaking for a lot of business owners, we immediately hand that off to, oh, my spouse can handle that. And I'm going to tell on Sarah a little bit here. She has done incredible with a high school education. She's not an accountant. I'm not an accountant. We are not financial people. I am a dirt and pipe guy. That is what I am. And then you take on this CEO title and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to make all these decisions now with absolutely zero experience other than being a dirt and pipe guy, and then being too prideful to reach out to somebody like yourself and go, hey, I need a little help. But to what you're doing as well with Unconventional CFO is be willing and open and go, hey, I just really want to work with these contractor guys. Speak a little bit on that, and why you just, number one, because of our open mindset, I can understand, but there's a lot of walls we put up.
Yeah, but I also, what I love about most of you guys are your action takers, right? So like, if we have a call and I say, Sai, this month, these are the action items that need to get done. Like, once you understand it and once you can wrap your head around it, it's go time, right? Like, you're hardworking and like you're willing to do the things. I candidly, personality wise, being from the Northeast, like I'm a no BS person. Like I don't need to be
Jersey
on the other end of like some woman that owns a coaching business that like is indecisive and like like excuses. I don't deal well with that, right? So for me, I love the fact that it's like, all right, now that I know what to do, I'm gonna go get it. So for me, like that's such a big thing. The other thing too, I know we started talking about cash flow, but there's such a need with the cash flow issues to like get a good system in place and like also process. The other thing I bring from a perspective is like, hey, what technology can we use to fix this? Like I've seen guys still doing stuff on paper. I've seen inefficiencies with like even a spouse doing some level of bookkeeping where it's like, well, I'm going to teach you how to set the rules. So you don't even have to touch the transaction anymore. Right. So like just being able to see opportunities and inefficiencies of what goes on. I think there's such a big opportunity to save people time so they can focus on chasing revenue, not on categorizing expenses and like low level stuff.
Everything you're speaking on, like I'm sitting here going like, well, yeah, duh, because it sounds so, I don't even know what the word is for it, but I encourage you guys that are in that 3 to 7 year mark as you're building whatever business that you may be in, guys. You're not a CFO. You are not a CEO yet. There's people out. You put yourself in that position, big dog, and it's up to you, man or woman, to go out, research, find people that build comfortable relationships that teach you. And I will tell you straight up from my experience with the financial side, I have trusted the wrong folks. We didn't even get to cash flow management or any proactive system. It was all reactionary to every question that I had. And I'm like, why are you not telling me this information? I thought I trust you to just pay the tax man, I guess. And there's no strategy. There's no process,
Yeah, so let's dive into the different accountants. I know we probably had that towards later in the conversation, but let's dive into that because it was such a good lead of like, I always say, first, let's talk about CPAs. I am one, but I like to describe CPAs just like a medical degree. We all have passed something like the boards, but then we all have specialties. So as a CPA, I actually do not do tax work. Like, it's interesting because people often say, I need a CPA. Usually that means I need someone to do my taxes. But I will say CPAs have different specialties. Understanding your need versus a title is what I always encourage people. So there are some basic needs in your organization, no matter your size, that you are going to need. And let's talk about tax first, right? Tax compliance. You have to have your return done. You need to make sure payroll taxes are getting remitted, anything sales tax. And then beyond just tax compliance, that is just like my stuff is filed, things are getting paid. Tax planning and strategy are always what I encourage. Planning, for sure. That is having conversations before the end of the year to understand, like, well, what's my liability going to be? So I can either plan to spend more money this year, or I want to show some profit because I'm going to go to the banks looking for lending, right? And that's hard to do if I'm showing a loss year after year. So just having a conversation from tax planning before you get your tax bill, before the end of the year where it's too late. And then strategy is really, right, the stuff that gets hyped on social media. But like once you get to a certain size, making sure that you've elected to be like an S Corp, you can hire your kids, right? There's the Augusta rule. There's a number of different things from a strategy when like you're in a position where you really want to minimize tax and you're willing to put in some work and invest in someone helping you to do that. That's the tax piece. Now, let's talk accounting and kind of the management of your finances on a regular basis.
Okay.
At a minimum, you need a bookkeeper. I'm not saying you have to hire one. It could be your wife. It could be your cousin. It could be someone that lives overseas and does it at a very low rate. It could be someone you have in your office. It can be whatever you envision it to be, right? So, but having someone who understands enough about your business and your industry and whether they're willing to learn it because there's someone who's going to be in-house with you full time or going to be someone you're looking for externally. Again, I always recommend someone who has done your type of business. Construction, collar businesses are very different than working on, I don't know, a SaaS company, a retail client. Like it's just nuanced, and you want somebody who understands how you need to analyze your financials so they can prepare your financials on a regular basis for you to be able to review. The other thing, maybe just as we're talking bookkeeping, I just want to encourage frequency, right? I don't want a bookkeeper to come in once a year and like clean it up and just look at them annually. I want them to close my books every single month. So I have the ability to look at my business and actually make decisions, because if I'm waiting even a quarter, that's 3 months of information that like I can't react to 2 months ago. It's really hard to continually make decisions if I don't understand where I have been on a regular basis. So I just want to encourage regular bookkeeping. If it's not being done weekly, at least monthly. Close the books so we have some information. So the bookkeeper is one. Two is an accountant, right? Some people need these, some people don't. But those are people who potentially are doing your AP, processing payroll, doing some of the like transaction type stuff that's not just working like within your GL, whether it's QuickBooks Online or whatever system you're using to do your bookkeeping. And the accountant can be engaged too to help with AR, things like that, account reconciliations. So that's number two. You can also have layers in between, right? Can I have a controller when I get to a certain size that manages your accounting team? Sure. But we're going to skip that for purposes of this discussion. But where we talk about CFO, I always want people to understand, like, that's executive level. That is someone who is focused, like you said, the thing you were missing was forecasting, strategy, advice. And candidly, when you are a smaller business, you don't need this person full time, right? I love the fractional model, and I love that like people are just becoming more aware of it, because it gives you the advantage of having advice from someone who has such experience in the market, serving, in my experience, multi-billion-dollar corporations for 2 decades, right? If I were to go get a full-time job, it's going to cost multiple 6 figures for someone to hire me full-time. But you get my expertise for your business at your level for a fee, a fraction of the cost, right? Like, so it's just a great model because you get expertise you wouldn't normally until you get to like $50 million in revenue and I actually need someone full-time, right? So like, I just want to encourage people to think about like the level of expertise, and like there's all different CFOs out there, right? People may have worked, in FP&A, they may have worked in corporate, like there's a number of different experience levels that you're going to find with CFOs, but like that's where the trust thing comes into, that I encourage anybody looking for CFOs to really find someone still has experience in their industry, but someone you really have relationship with. Because we're going to have some hard conversations, right? I'm going to say, Sai, like, we didn't talk about this transaction and you did it, and like there's nothing we can do about it. So now we got to figure out the path forward, right? So like having hard conversations, but also celebrating the wins. And like it's such an intimate relationship because I am looking at your decisions. I am looking at your numbers. I'm asking you about how your personal goals fit into your business goals. I'm going to ask about your family dynamics. I'm going to ask about all sorts of things that might feel uncomfortable, but also like just are so helpful in terms of really getting in to strategize about what the tangible short-term steps are to get to those very long-term goals.
You just slayed that. That is a great definition that, seriously, because for a blue collar guy, we're just thinking, oh, I need somebody to handle my books. What does that even mean? Like, and you just broke down the bookkeeping level. That's what you need. You need a bookkeeper. You need somebody to close that month out. You need somebody to enter expenses, enter deposits. Hopefully it reconciles at the end of the month. But past that, everything else could be fractional from there. So I would highly suggest you get somebody, just like Miss Lauren just said, with some experienced expertise. That's word to word, negative there. But anyways, experience in your field, because
and it's
instruction is so different.
Yeah. And it's looking for the need, right? So instead of saying I need a CFO, maybe it's saying like, hey, I'm a GC and I'm looking for strategic partnership with financials, right? Or I own a landscaping business. I really need someone that can help with my bookkeeping, right? So like seeking it in the market in a way that clearly communicates your need versus like the person, because then I think it just becomes harder to like really find the person you're looking for. So I always say like express the need, and then you can find ultimately who fits that. It might be a CPA, it might not.
And a lot of times, guys, I'll just, again, being pretty vulnerable here, I've had a extremely rough relationship with the last 2 or 3 CPAs that we've gone through. I feel comfortable with the one that we've landed on now, that now actually has experience. Funny you might say that, with my specific industry. And so it actually was worse that I was trending with these people, because we were trending in the exact opposite direction. Like I just said, it was reactionary. There was no proactiveness. But just like you guys, uh, excavation guys, some of you guys may go out and dig cable. Some of you guys may go out and do water line. Like, I'm a utility guy. I do water and sewer and storm drain, but I don't do anything with cable. Do I have the same equipment to be able to put cable in the ground? Absolutely. But it is a totally different sector of my industry that I don't have experience in. So just like to your point, that bookkeeping, that's pretty general knowledge, and we can get somebody trained up or get them with somebody that you trust and have a comfortable relationship at that, whether it's the executive level or whoever that may be. I would highly suggest that it's somebody with the expertise to train from day one at that year two mark. Like, I know a lot of you guys are sitting there going, oh, they may even just scroll right by us. I'm not ready for that, a CFO. And I'm like, guys, dude, I wish I could go back 5 or 6 years and concentrate and find a Miss Lauren that would come in and go, hey, what? Do we really need this 85,000-pound excavator before you sign your name to it? Like, can you show me contractually where you're going to use this machine 8 months out of the year and have the absolute need? I need those challenges, and you guys do too. You need somebody challenging you, because if not, you're just going to have short-term goals and short-term fail, because you have to have that mentorship. That's somebody to go to and get advice. Sometimes it's going to be worse than that you would expect. Sometimes it's going to be a flat no. But I think what I was hearing from you just a minute ago, that a lot of these clients just go ahead and do those decisions and then go, hey, how are we going to fix this?
Yeah. And I think it's having the ability to give them a tool to see what the impact is before they do it and getting them to use it, right? So like, we're going to invest all this time building a cash flow forecast. Well, so I'm going to teach you how to use it even when you're not on the phone with me. So before you do that, like, go in and plug in the number in that cell and understand what happens exactly with your cash balance over time when you do that, right? So it's being able to equip people
Wow.
with implementing the review of the impact prior to the decision being made. And I think it's just getting them accustomed to using that tool, and it's so powerful. And I just recently onboarded a client where it was like, he said, I can't believe we weren't doing this before. And I said, you can't beat yourself up. You don't know what you don't know, right? But bring it all together. And I think the hard part sometimes too, depending on your structure, is like, well, I'm investing all this money in this system, like Procore or Foundations or whatever I'm using to do.
Don't say that word. That's a no word in my world. Oh my God, I
Right.
could go on about them.
But, right, like, I still don't feel like I have the capabilities to see the reporting that I truly need. So it's just being able to come in and like bring it all together for you guys that I think is so impactful too. Of like, listen, sure, you guys can transact, do estimating and do job costing and wherever, but like being able to bring that all together so you can understand the big picture isn't always done. And again, if you don't understand or bring somebody in who's going to explain that to you, it's really unfortunate.
I think that's where you're obviously striving to be different. It's not a, hey, let me handle all of this. And you probably have clients that are like that and do one meeting a quarter, et cetera. But then you probably also have clients that you talk to almost every day, probably,
Yep.
and that are needing that guidance and I still need taught on a lot of the things at the executive level that I still don't quite understand. Don't get me wrong. Education is expensive and experience is priceless. And me going through and learning those mistakes without having some type of forecast. And still to this day, I've got a small budget, but do I have this forecasted plan, guys? I'm not sitting in front of you acting like I got everything that's coming out of her mouth. I'm learning with you guys. Like, I'm 9 years into this, and as a company, we are completely overhauling our financial and our awareness, tax consult, all of it, bookkeeping, everything. But it takes a few of those education lessons if you're not going to jump out there in year 2 or year 3 and start this system and avoid those. I would highly suggest you do that. But if not, you are going to learn with your own money and pay for a very hard knocked education that could be avoided. But I think that's the big difference that I'm hearing is like, I've never had anybody in the financial world go, "Hey, Cy," well, other than my CPA we've been working with not too long, sat there with my P&L. He is a fairly highly regarded man and doesn't have much time. It's very boom, boom, boom. He sat there for 2 hours, went through my P&L and balance sheet and asked questions and circled this, wanted to know just like you're saying, hey, where's this coming from? Why is this here? Do you even
Yep.
know what this is? No, I don't. And I can honestly say, yes, I know how to write a P&L and a balance sheet. It may not be the results that I want, but do I know how to fix the information on that balance sheet and that P&L to get me where I want to go is the biggest question of all. And most of the time, guys, don't feel bad. You're not going to know how. Neither do I. That's why I'm sitting here having this conversation. I've gone to a fourth CPA in 9 years that actually has expertise in what I do. So that's that. I encourage you to, I mean, client level, Miss Lauren, where obviously you've been up here at the upper echelon, but your main contractor that you're working with, is
Yep.
that $100K a year? Is that $1 million a year? Where's that range for these
Yeah.
guys that are listening?
Yeah. So I always preach that everyone can benefit from a CFO. I will say it's not like you said, people might scroll past this and say, I'm not ready for that, right? That's wrong. That's actually wrong. Right? So
100%.
everyone can benefit. Now, the frequency may be different depending on your size and complexity. So I'll say for smaller businesses in the 6-figure range, like I'll do a one-time service and it'll be, okay, hey, Lauren, like I've got my books cleaned up. Like I really need to build a forecast. Can you help me? Sure. I'm going to meet with you one-on-one. We build the forecast. I'm going to teach you how to use it, but you got to go do it because you can't afford it.
Yep.
Right. So candidly.
Yep.
And it's, to be honest, when you're that size, you don't have as much complexity with needing me as frequent as you do. Right. So it's getting that in place. And like, as you start to grow, just there's more growing pains. You've got more team, you've got more systems, you've got more issues that just come up. Right. So it's just, when you're on the smaller side, even just once a year, and that one-time service I do with people, it really depends on what their need is. A lot on looking at pricing, right? Can we look at estimating? Can we look at bidding? Like, are we profitable? Like, does this make sense? And when you're only looking at gross margin and you're not looking at your overhead costs, like really looking at them, not just like guessing, oh, well, I think 20% makes sense. Like, guess what?
You're wrong. You're wrong. I am the guy.
Like, sometimes you need someone to show you that, right?
Yeah.
So like I've had those conversations as well. So just making sure foundationally some things are set, because if you have goals to grow your revenue, guess what? That margin issue doesn't go away, it just becomes a lot bigger and your cash runs out very quick with like bigger jobs that you're accepting.
Oh, does it?
So that I would say for the smaller, right? Again, like maybe once a year and specifically focused, but you have to make sure that you're going to use whatever tool we spend time on. I do have quarterly clients that fall kind of in the $1 million to $3 million range from an annual revenue standpoint. And that is where, again, they're not huge, but like still need some advice. They're not making decisions as frequently typically when we go that route, where they're like, you know, we're having the bookkeeping done. We know how to look at the reports, and like the reports that we provide are real time. So they can go in at any point in time and look at it themselves. Right. But like our meetings just aren't as frequent. It's, you know, more information to review on a quarterly basis in terms of what's happened. But, you know, again, like just that revenue mark, not as complex, but if you're growth minded and you're growth driven, and you're going to get up to kind of where the sweet spot is, that I say it's between $3 and $50 million of annual revenue, that I think you need someone who's engaged each month. And we talk, as you said before, more than monthly, that's for sure. We have a monthly dashboard review of the financials. That's pretty formal, but like every other week, we're having conversations. And to be honest, we're on Slack. They're emailing me, calling me, and it's not, they're not treating me as a full-time employee, but at the same time, when there's urgent things that need to be handled related to finance, I'm not going to ignore it, right? Just because I'm your fractional CFO doesn't mean that like I'm going to leave you on your own to deal with something that I really do need to be involved with. And then beyond that, it's like you really need somebody full-time, right? So when you get to that like 50 and beyond $1 million mark, like you probably need to go out and hire an actual CFO that works for you full-time and sits in the office. And that's always the goal for me, is like either get them to like exit or whatever goal they have long term, or get them where they need a full-time CFO and help them hire that person, right? Like, what are you looking for? What are the attributes? Is there anyone I can recommend? So like for me, it's always get them to the point where they don't need me anymore.
That's what I hear a lot of from the good ones. I want to work myself out of a job.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? And that's just teaching. That's, hey, entrepreneurs, that's opening these big things on the side of your heads and listening to what they're saying. They're not, I promise you, they're not wrong. I have sat across many tables many times and go, oh, that's not, there's no way. And then make up some realization, justification that's completely fabricated to make myself feel okay about the insecurity of you seeing
Sure.
this. And I have done it. I can't tell you how many times, but you're not going to get any better not holding yourself accountable. And how, as a business owner, the only way you know you're making money is overviewing the P&L, the balance sheet, monthly, per project. I know I'm maybe going a little further in depth, but when you get past that five-year mark, you really got to start job costing per job, per project. I would encourage you to do it before
Even
then.
before that.
Yes,
From
of
day
course.
one, I'm sorry. Like if you
Well,
don't have,
that would
if
be
you don't
coming
have
from
a,
your
if
side of the
if
screen,
you
but
don't have
over
a
here
whip
in real
report,
world,
if you don't have a whip report and you're actually monitoring it, like that's another thing we're going to spend a lot of time on.
a what? A whip report?
A whip report.
Tell us about it.
Oh my God, Si, I'm going to send it to you. Here's the template. Tell the accountant that you have to go do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it literally is looking at your job progress. Again, like depending on the functionality of your system, a lot of it happens in whatever system you're using to do costing and to actually like manage that. But a document that shows every single job, it's a job cash flow, basically. It's going to show what you've invoiced, what percentage complete you are, if there's overbidding, like just really mapping out.
Okay. So
When you're
we would,
invoicing, when are we collecting that money? Like if we have overages, we can clearly see it. Like, how are we invoicing? Is it based on actual costs or is it based on percentage complete? Like, just being able to see the whole picture from a job perspective and monitor that very closely.
yeah, that is called what we would call an underbilling, overbilling.
That's part of it.
Okay.
Right. So, like,
Fair
I've
enough.
run under and overbilling reports out of the system to feed into this whip report because it's got just all the different components put in because I'm with you, right? Like over underbilling is showing obviously snapshot in time of where you are, invoice versus total job contract. But again, like just bringing in the cost component and really being able to analyze again the cash flows and how those come in as well. So you can analyze it. And the biggest benefit, because you probably go in job by job, that is important. But understanding how all the jobs fit together is such a big piece too, because guess what? When I start one big commercial job and I have to outlay 6 weeks of payroll costs before I see a dime, that's a problem if I have another big job that's starting in the same month as well, right? So like just being able to say yes and saying no to jobs too, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't have that picture, you don't have the ability to really make the decisions. And sometimes the shiny thing seems exciting, but at the end of the day, like, can you actually afford to do it?
I am telling you, it would be so, I don't even know the word, refreshing, to be able to see that. And I can tell on myself and go, no, we don't have a whip report in place. And sounds like we absolutely need to. And from this conversation, I
would.
might actually benefit in a quick regard there. But yeah, knowing, well, yeah, overbilling, underbilling, like even most CPAs, last 3 CPAs, I just learned what an overbilling, underbilling, all of that is. I'm 9 years in, right? And this CPA is like, what do you mean you don't know what underbilling, overbilling is? This is like your whole document to go to the bank with. And but what I was trying to get at is I'm finally in a regard where they know the construction basis from estimation to production to accounting. And it all ties together. Like we even speak the same language. Hey, you're a contractor, go be a contractor. Let me be an accountant. And hey, I need this information from the field into the admin team so the admin team can get that into accounting as quickly as possible. Footages, production rates, material, job, all of that. But that's like one first piece of the puzzle that so many don't ever even get to, is the project management role of, it's not about work you can it's not about work you can do, it's about work you can document you've done, and getting that documentation in real time,
Yep.
moving through the whole kit and caboodle to get to you so you can give us the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way you can react to that, right, is if you've got your team doing it on a regular basis. So, like,
Yeah.
implementing some process changes if they need to happen and them understanding the impact. I think communication with team is always kind of key. Like, guys, this is why this is important. It might feel annoying, but like, I need you to go in and update this stuff so I can react. I can have conversations about additional bills or, talking to suppliers about material costs, whatever it is, right? Like, there's only one way that you can react, and that's if they're doing it timely.
Change orders. How can you adjust for change orders? And how do you know how much gravel you've actually used
Yep.
if you don't even, yeah, I was there. It was
The
such a
last thing
struggle.
people want is a last minute surprise.
Oh my God. And you're thinking in your head, because I was for years, oh, well, obviously this is going to cost this. Here's your bill. And they're like, oh, no. How about not? Do you have written approval? Do you have this? Do you have that? And so there's so many lessons to be learned. And especially as you grow so quickly and you get out in front of, you're overextended in your skis. But you can do that on a production standpoint, and you can do that from a manpower standpoint. But the one place you cannot do that is in the financial sense. I can sit here and say that, but I can also sit here and say that I have done that, and I'm living through it right now, and being unbankable and doing all these crazy things of being a part of what a business owner is. But if you don't know what you don't know, just like you said, and there's a lot of things in this regard that I still am learning, and I'm still having to learn the hard lessons on.
Yeah, and but I do want to take a minute to commend you on the fact that like you're willing to one switch providers, right? Like people get so comfortable, I think, with like the CPA they've been using forever, even if the service isn't that great. So the fact that you're
Mm,
willing to get what you want to be paying for, you know what I mean? Like the fact
mhm.
that you have someone giving you professional services and you're willing to like actually go out and chase what you think you need at this point, is number one. And number two, that you're willing to do the cleanup stuff, right? That like you understand the foundation has to be good in order to build the rest of the house. So you're in the thick of that, right? Of like digging out and building that foundation and getting good numbers. So then you can move into the ability to do something like forecasting. Because I'll tell you now, someone that hires me that has terrible books, I've had multiple conversations where like people have said, I haven't done my taxes, I haven't done my bookkeeping in like 2 years. And I'm like, till you get that cleaned up, like just don't call me, right? Like
Yeah.
I am not going to be helpful to you if I don't have good information. So the fact that you're taking the steps to get that in good shape, you're facing that, right? That vulnerability, that asking for help,
Mhm.
like you overcome those mindset things and you're headed in the right direction.
Well, I'll tell you, because I built a house with a crappy foundation and it blew over in the first windstorm, and we've done a lot of work in our little 9 years, and
Yeah.
we've done a lot, but at the same time, it will always come crumbling down. I mean, technically, that's what I do, is civil construction, is
Mhm.
foundation, taking out the bad, putting in the good.
Yeah.
And and it is just such a simple, and I think a lot of guys in my shoes, just to be frank with you, get almost feel completely ignorant when we're sitting across the table in a lot of these conversations, like, and just feel just outright dumb, because we're
Yeah.
like, how did we not do, why, what? And it's like, but again, reach out, be vulnerable. You are going to get embarrassed. You are going to feel shame. But guess what? You don't know what you don't know. Go find the right, comfortable relationships to help you move forward, because the wrong ones are only going to hold you back, and if not, set you further back than where you're at right now.
Yeah, and listen, I'm a business owner too. There's
Yep.
things in my business, sure, I can analyze my financials all day, right? But I can't necessarily do a great job at marketing, right? So like there's things in my
Well,
business
that's
I'm
why
not
you're
great
here.
at. And that's why I'm like, okay, someone needs to help me. Like
Yep.
I hire out, I have people teach me, okay, I'm going to engage you to help me with my marketing. All right, explain this to me, show the system to me, do all the things. Like I need education on it, one. And number two, I also need help where like, I just don't know how to do that stuff. And that's okay. I'm not going to be the jack of all trades and I can't fulfill every need if I think I'm going to be like a normal human being, right? Like I can't do all the things
Right.
um in 24 hours that I get for the day, right? So it's just acknowledging that, and that's okay, right? And like the finances to me is an expected one that you're going to ask for help on, so it shouldn't be embarrassing. And I understand though, because it's, especially when you've been in business for a long time, there's guys that sit across to you that I should have known this, right? There's some shame and there's some ego. And I know that's a hard conversation to
Mhm.
have, right? When you are a blue collar guy, which usually you guys are a little rough around the edges and like you don't
Yeah.
want to admit when you're wrong and like
Funny.
all the things. But guess what? Like the only way to make this better is to figure out where you are. It's just like weight loss. You cannot have a goal if you're not willing to get on the scale and see where you are today.
And I think, honest to God, if it shout out to podcast videos here because the owner and myself were talking. He's a mentor to myself, and um, he's like, "Hey, man, have you ever?" This is about almost 2 years ago. He's like, "Hey, have you ever heard about fractional HR?" Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what's fractional?" Like in my mind, I didn't even know that there was fractional HR ladies, fractional CFOs, fractional project management guys. Like there is these tools and resources that are experts, tried and true through experience of 20 years of getting to where, Miss Lauren's at. Well, let her use that for your business where you're at right now and start today. I'm telling you guys. I don't know if I have, but if you guys have loved this content, bluecollarbusinesspodcast.com. Don't know if I threw the sponsorship, but today we're going to do a post roll today, sponsored by Sycon Excavation and Utilities. If you'd love to be a sponsor here on the Blue Collar Business Podcast and you have a product or a service that we may be able to showcase here for you, reach out to us on the website, become a sponsor tab, and get in touch with us there. I got to ask you the final question here. It's maybe not the final question, but I think we've already talked about mindset so much, but I ask everybody the same question if you've listened to a couple of episodes. But what's the takeaway for the blue collar guy? And let's go entrepreneur route that is sitting there feeling that shame and embarrassment. What's his first couple of steps to getting out of that stuck mindset and exactly where his position he is
Yeah,
at now?
you have to really take a good hard look at why you're doing this whole thing. And
Mhm.
if you're not willing to ask for help, and to be honest, I think you're gonna have a really hard time in the entrepreneurial world in general if you're not building team. If you think you can do it all yourself, finances are the exact same thing, right? It is just a member of your team that's going to help you with a specific piece of it, and you have to let go of the personal tie that it's
Mhm.
truly a reflection of your identity. It's not, right? You may have made some crappy decisions, and guess what? You're going to learn from those because we're going to figure out what to do differently to really improve profitability, get your hands around cash flow forecast, eliminate the stress. Like
Mm.
the other thing that people don't understand is the intangible things that come from being comfortable with your finances. Those of you have been wide awake at night thinking, how am I going to make payroll this week? Am I going to have to lay guys off? It is not a good feeling.
It's not.
And to be able to eliminate that and to be able to be comfortable that you've got the right process around your financial reporting, you've got the right people engaged, and you truly have people in your corner is a level of comfort that I can't even explain. Like, and for that to replace the ego, it seems like a no-brainer. No-brainer.
That's a really good response, and no, I would agree with you. I can't tell you how many nights I have stared at the ceiling going, "Well, Lord, what we gonna do this month there, feller?" And trusting and faithing in him, but going past that is being a good steward, and
Amen.
you've got to figure out exactly what you're doing with those finances. And the one thing you said that we talked in intro is that you wouldn't bore us with the financial talk. And so I've got to
Is everyone
say,
asleep?
No, I doubt they are. I bet you've rung a few guys' bells, honestly, just
Uh,
from the way you sat there and described and came out of the box as unconventional as you are into your inward look of financials and helping us because they're the biggest struggle for these guys. I know you've already seen it, but
mhm,
in my experience, to get past that 5-year mark, that 3-year mark, these guys are good, honest guys. They start out that way,
mhm.
but they get consumed by the business piece that overwhelms them. They do what they got to do to get out, and then all of a sudden, they're not a thing anymore. And that is the number one focus. I started this podcast was to shine light in things that I have struggled with immensely to get where I'm at and to be real and open and raw about what needs to happen next. And hopefully you guys have found some value. I know I have. She got me kind of thinking on a couple of things. So if I'm thinking, I bet they are too. So I can't thank you enough for joining us. Where can we find you socially? Website or go ahead.
Yeah, website's the best bet because honestly, on my website, you can actually book time directly on my calendar because if anyone's interested in hearing a little more about what fractional CFO services are, also if you're looking for recommendations, the other thing I love doing with people that I don't even end up working with is like, hey, Lauren, I live in Georgia and I really hate my tax account. Do you know anybody down there? Like, I love making connections, even if you're not meant to work with me,
Okay.
like, and you're looking for accounting support, whether it's bookkeeping, whether it's tax related, or you really do want to hear more about fractional CFO work, I'd love to chat.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, guys, you can find the rest of our episode on bluecollarbusinesspodcast.com or any podcast platform that you're already streaming on. You can watch from the website as well. You don't have to have a subscription if you guys don't. So don't be afraid there. Miss Lauren, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, share it with the fellers, check out our website to send us any questions and comments about your experience in the blue collar business. Who do you want to hear from? Send them our way and we'll do our best to answer any questions you may have. Till next time, guys.